Good morning and welcome to Between the Lines, live from our Body Armor Coca-Cola studios at Ferg Sports Bar and Grill in St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Tristan and I'm joined by my co-host Aiden. As you can probably tell, we are missing Jake today, but that's because he will be calling in from Charlotte, North Carolina, where the Panthers host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today in a crucial interdivision matchup. But first, before we get into that, how are you doing today, Aiden?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good myself. You know, it's a beautiful Sunday morning here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Ferg Sports Bar and Grill is kind of empty right now, but being that it is a Buccaneers away game, starts at 1 p.m., I imagine that this place is going to be packed very soon. It was very hard actually finding parking on the way in here. So although there aren't many people here right now, there should be very soon. We have already seen some Buccaneers jerseys walking around. But we do, like I said, have Jake calling in very soon at around 11:15, so stay tuned for that. But before we get into that serious Tampa Bay Buccaneers discussion, there's been some news this week with the Tampa Bay Rays. There's been some roster moves, some player moves. So I think we should first get into that, discuss that a little bit. Just to address the elephant in the room, Brandon Lau, the 8-year player, is gone to the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates receive second baseman Brandon Lau, left-handed pitcher Mason Montgomery, outfielder Jake Mangum, and the Astros receive right-handed pitcher Mike Burrows from the Pirates, and the Rays receive right-handed pitcher Anderson Brito and outfield prospect Jacob Melton, who Jacob Melton is actually the number 2 ranked prospect. Is it the number 2 ranked prospect overall or just in their system?
I think it's in the Rays farm system.
Yeah, in the Rays farm system, which is actually pretty crazy. That's a pretty good value. Obviously you don't like to see those long tenured guys go, the guys that have proved themselves already on the mound, or not on the mound, just on the diamond. But it's a move that I would expect to see as a part of some bigger moves. I feel like it's a bigger picture type of move, and I think the biggest question right now is kind of Ketel Marte. Yeah. A lot of Rays fans really do want Ketel Marte, and for so many different reasons, just because the versatility. I'm kind of on the fence about him. His age. Him potentially being an emotional liability, as we saw last season, especially considering his age. What are your thoughts on it? Would you want Ketel Marte? And if so, what do you think you would see the Rays giving up for a guy like Ketel Marte?
I would love to bring in Ketel Marte, but I feel like to get Ketel Marte, we're going to have to give up a lot of our good prospects like Brody Hopkins in our farm system. But adding like Anderson Brito and Melton, those both really add to our farm system a lot. And I'd really like to get Ketel Marte, but as long as we're not giving up too many of those farm system prospects, I really do like that trade. And I really want it to happen.
Yeah, no, the Rays front office continuously seems to make moves, seem like with the future in mind, for the most part. It's never really only based on what is going to be happening in this next season. We kind of saw that in a very small sense last season. Mm-hmm. With the Ha-Seong Kim signing in the offseason. They made a couple other moves that we, didn't expect. But other than that, that was really the last time. And even that didn't work out in the long run. Mm-hmm. So I think they are kind of back towards that, what prospects can we get? Can we secure a future? I even saw a quote from Eric Neander that he was more focused on the future. So Friday's deals were, I think, more about losing a little bit in 26 to gain an awful lot as we look into the future. It seems as if we need to start thinking about now rather than the future down the line. Yeah. I personally think we should start thinking about now, especially because there's a limited time left in the Trop.
Not only that, too. We have, a lot of all-stars that are starting to get old. Like Yandy Diaz, he's starting to get really old now. We have Shane McClanahan coming off an injury. We haven't really got to see him too much. The one year we did, he was definitely in that Cy Young finalist. Had a great year.
You have a great young player in Junior Caminero, too.
Yeah, a great young player in Junior Caminero. Hope he can stay for his whole career here and be like, the Evan Longoria of the Tampa Bay Rays.
Definitely. Yeah, and I agree with that. And I do want Junior Caminero to stay for as long as he can. But, kind of knowing this Rays front office, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, they've been known to, develop a player, have them exceed for a few years, maybe keep them for on a shorter contract, and then let them go to a bigger team that can pay them more money. And so I imagine that is possibly what could happen with Junior Caminero, although I do not want that to happen. I clearly don't want that to happen. Junior Caminero does nothing but strengthen our bats. And
something the Rays really needed. We haven't had a home run hitter for the Rays in such a long time.
Other than like Yandy, like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I won't call 20-something home runs a home. I mean, it definitely is. That's a great amount of home runs to have on your team, but that's not a home run hitter on your team. I think 30. Oh, obviously Brandon Lau was, but he wasn't. He wasn't staying healthy as much. He was out for a lot of that year, so we almost didn't have anyone with 20 home runs. I mean, Isak Paredes had the power, but just not a 40 home run hitter like Junior Caminero.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's a really good sign when a guy as young as Junior Caminero almost breaks the franchise record for home runs hit in a single season.
He was like 5 off, wasn't he?
He was like 4 off, I think. It was something crazy like that. And, I mean, every single game that you watched, every single home run that you saw Junior Caminero hit, it was just like, you're getting one home run closer to breaking that franchise record, which just would have sent shockwaves, I think, not only just through the Rays organization and the Rays fan base, but just through the MLB as a whole, because, everyone knows him now, especially after that home run derby performance. He's just an absolute, he rakes.
And yeah, what I like about Junior Caminero too, he's not a just get it over the wall. Even though playing in Steinbrenner, which you can get a lot of home runs like that, when you hit a home run, you're expecting it to go 390 plus or 400 plus every time he's hitting a home run. You expect it to go really far.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a power bat. And another thing is he hit a lot of strength PRs in this offseason. I've been following him on social media, keeping up to date with his, kind of strength conditioning, the workouts that he's been doing. And he's been hitting PRs on bench, on, like single arm presses. And so I expect, another big season for him with a lot of home runs, a lot of power.
Definitely, we're going to see how he does in the Trop. He's now played a full season in the Trop now.
Yeah, I'm so excited, especially if anyone listening at home saw that video of him when he walked into the Trop for the first time amidst the construction, trying to get the roof back on. He actually said, like, this is my home. Which is just great. You kind of you want that kind of guy in your organization, in your clubhouse. Not only is he inspiring the rest of the team just via his play, hitting all those home runs, just offensively being a beast, but also he characterizes really kind of like what you want as an individual, as a person that can uplift everyone else, even in his it's really only his second year fully in the club. Really, we're coming up on the second year, so
yeah, second full year.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see the impact that he continues to have on the rest of the Rays roster and the Rays organization as a whole.
I think he's coming on 22 years old now, right? 23.
I think he's 23. They're coming up on 23. Yeah. But yeah, he's just one of those guys. Like I said, you definitely want in your clubhouse, on the diamond, in the batter's box. Just does so much for the organization already, and he hasn't even been in that long. So if you don't mind really quick, I'm going to jump over to the Tampa Bay Lightning because the Lightning played a great game last night against the Carolina Hurricanes. So Andrei Vasilevsky went 18 for 22 on saves with an 81.8 save percentage. Great defensive game by him. Obviously, you're missing some of the defense. Hedman's out. So, you can't always make up for the defense in every other aspect, but Andrei Vasilevsky's been playing a great brand of goaltender. Jake Gensel had 2 points off of 2 goals. He had 0 assists with 5 shots on goal. Ryan McDonough had 2 points off 1 goal and 1 assist. Moser had 1 point off 1 assist. Braden Point had 1 point off of 1 goal. Nick Paul had 1 point off of an assist. Jake Finley had 1 point off of 1 goal. Connor D'Estau, I always struggle saying his name. It's just so French. He had 2 points off of 2 assists. James had 2 points off of 2 assists. And Goncalves had 1 point off of 1 goal. So that's what you've really been seeing out of the Lightning this year is they've been spreading the puck around a lot. They've been getting it to as many guys as they can, especially in space near the goal. They've been John Cooper's showing why he's one of the best, hockey coaches, managers in the entire NHL continuously, because he can take these young guys, these guys from the Syracuse Crunch, and he can make them superstars overnight. Just the game planning, the strategizing, and the way he plays the guys in the right moments. I mean, it really couldn't be better. At first, in the first 2 periods of that game, it really didn't look like the Lightning were going to come out with the win there.
Mm-hmm.
It looked pretty rough. Towards the end of the second period and all of the third period, the Lightning just shut the Carolina Hurricane down.
Mm-hmm.
It was something else. And funny enough, two Florida teams, 2 Tampa teams playing 2 Carolina teams in the same 2 days. Saturday Lightning versus Carolina, Sunday Bucks versus Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they scheduled that on purpose.
Yeah, I wonder. But I do like how you're talking about how they spread the puck, because that really does lead to Kucherov being tied 7th in the whole National Hockey League in assists, which is really great by him. He's been great at getting assists around. Obviously, last year he did really good, finishing the year with 84 assists, actually in first place, tied with Nathan McKinnon. But the type of offense the Tampa Bay Lightning plays, I really like it. They make Nikita Kucherov really that center to pass the puck around, really get to the goal.
And one of the key points that everyone's been, acknowledging this season is the absence of Braden Point's offense. But then again, you also have to look, and I've been saying this, continuously. I've said this multiple times on multiple different shows. But, teams are defensively scheming around Braden Point and around his, his stick, because he changes the momentum of entire games. Whatever period, however much you're down, Braden Point is a plug-and-play sort of guy that you can throw in there and you can expect big things out of him. Though he is a starter, starts on second line, he's just one of those game changers that guys really have to mix up in order to try to even have a chance at beating the Lightning. Who was it that just beat the Lightning? It wasn't the New Jersey... I forget who it was, but someone beat the Lightning very recently. And
the Kings.
The Kings, that's who it was. And that was just a very bad game for the Lightning offensively. But then again, they can't win every single game.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you don't see hockey clubs going undefeated, winning every single game in the season, because you do have some games where you just slip up offensively, can't create enough stop on defense. It was only like 2-0, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
I think that was 2-1.
2-1.
Lightning got out strong with the first goal, and then I think they just fell off after that.
Yeah, they lit the lamp early, but couldn't really finish on that side, and the Kings ended up taking that one. But there's so much to look forward to as a Lightning fan, especially with today's game that they're playing. They just look so hot right now, and I expect big things out of them. I feel like last season it was kind of a question as if they could even try to make that Stanley Cup push, because towards the end of the season, like the last game, I was actually there for the last game of the season. They played the Miami Panthers. They're hardly the Florida Panthers. They shouldn't be the Florida Panthers. But I was there for it, and they beat them in pretty good fashion. But then they immediately lost to them in the first round, which sucked. But like I said, you got to look forward. You can't let the past affect the current play. And so I think as a Lightning fan, you have a lot to look forward to going forward. And what are your closing remarks on that?
Well, I think going back to what you said about Braden Point really stepping down offensively, I think that's helped Brandon Hagel step up offensively. He's been great this year, although missing the last game due to upper body injury. I think Braden Point's step down, because he's taking, obviously teams have to scheme towards him. I really think that's opened up like a really good game and really great season for Brandon Hagel.
Definitely, and Jake Gensel as well.
And Jake Gensel showed like who he can play as and who he is last season. I think towards the end of last season, he was really showing how good of a center he can be.
Yeah, no. It's just every player on this Lightning team is doing a very good job right now, as serving as a key role when you have guys like Braden Point who maybe aren't excelling, or guys like Hedman that are just out as of right now and can't really be that cornerstone of the team that you like to see. I will say things to improve on. I would say just general defense. Stopping the puck before it gets to the net. not using that last line of defense, Andre Vasilevsky in goal, because you typically don't always have him. But right now we have Jake Magruder calling in from Charlotte, North Carolina. At Bank of America Stadium for the Carolina Panthers versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Jake, how are we doing today?
Well, we're on the road right now, on the way to Bank of America Stadium for the North Carolina Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Still have not bought tickets, but we're looking, trying to find the best deal possible.
Are you worried as if you were going to get into the stadium or not, as of right now?
No, we're not worried. There is plenty of tickets left. Just, trying to look for best possible price to sit in some good seats.
If there's plenty of tickets left, that might be a good sign, because it sounds like there might not be much stadium noise for the Buccaneers today at the away stadium.
Oh no, well, I'll tell you this: more than half of the sections are sold out. But on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers side, there is plenty of tickets left.
Well, that's a good sign. So you're en route to the stadium right now. What are your keys to the game for the Buccaneers today to try to win this against the Carolina Panthers?
Get some pressure off the edge. With Taylor Morton, I believe, who is out, the Buccaneers have to get some pressure on the quarterback, especially against Bryce Young. He has not been good this season under pressure, as most quarterbacks aren't, but you have to absolutely capitalize on getting pressure to the quarterback.
I completely agree. And how do you feel about Jason Pierre-Paul being elevated from the practice squad and is said to be playing today?
To me, it's really not that big of a deal. I think he's going to be a rotational kind of guy, and I think that he will, maybe make some key plays, but I'm not really looking to see anything big out of him.
I think it's important to note that as of right now, with the defensive line is in the state that it's been in, Jason Pierre-Paul can't really do anything negative. He can't really be worse than Hassan Reddick. Yaya Diaby has kind of held his own, kind of, been patchy here and there. But it's something that I'm excited to honestly see JPP playing for the first time in 3 years. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to have some crazy superstar type of game, not at all, not by any stretch of imagination. But, I do expect him to create some type of pressure, at least be in the back of Bryce Young's mind for most of the game. How do we feel about the rest of this defense, the secondary? Everyone is said to be healthy right now. Who do you think in the secondary is going to stand out the most this game?
I'm really looking for a big game out of Tyke Smith. We didn't see him last week against the Atlanta Falcons, the game that me and you actually went to.
And Aiden was there. We just didn't go together.
Yeah. Tyke Smith is such an X factor on that defense, and I honestly believe that he's been maybe even, you could call it, significantly better than Antoine Winfield has been this season, because it just seems like Tyke is the guy that's in the play every defense. And Winfield has had some great games here and there, but I really do believe that Tyke Smith has held his own.
Definitely, and not to say that anyone else on the defense, hasn't been committing every single play or hasn't been running, at full speed every single time that they can. But, we have kind of seen that out of this secondary, out of this defense as a whole this season, where maybe they haven't been getting to the ball on every single play. They haven't been swarming the ball. They haven't been getting to the play. They haven't been making absolutely everything happen that they can. And it's kind of frustrating to see. And that's kind of where you start to wonder, what's the motivation that they're getting? What is Todd Bowles saying behind closed doors? Like, what's the discussions that are happening, in training, in practice, even on the sidelines or in the locker room. But going back, swapping from the defense to the offense now. A mostly healthy offensive line. Everyone's said to be healthy. Bucky's said to be, back from any issues he might have had. Baker with the shoulder, completely back from that. Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, Tez Johnson. Everyone's just locked in and ready for today. What is it? Give me a stat line for Baker Mayfield, with all those healthy weapons, with the somewhat healthy offensive line, that you think he could reasonably have today to secure a Buccaneers victory.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying I feel like Baker's going to get sacked 2 or 3 times today. They've got Derek Brown up the middle. With the amount that we've been struggling between the offensive line, especially in the interior with Graham Barton, Mike Jordan, and Dan Feeney, I just do not think that – yeah, I did. I do not think that there is a scenario where Baker doesn't get sacked a few times because of the fact that there is absolutely no help in that interior offensive line. Whether Graham Barton is truly a, league average center or not, there is nothing he can do when, the offensive talent around him is just absolutely horrible. And so I do think he will get sacked 2 or 3 times, but other than that, I do think Baker will have a really good game. I think he is fired up. We see it going into important games. Baker really does, elevate his play between everybody else. And, I'm looking for a big game out of Jalen McMillan as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. We saw Jalen McMillan last week on Thursday. He was fired up. He was just not angry, but he was getting emotional because he was really in the game. You could tell that he missed the field. Same with Mike Evans. Mike Evans had a lot to say about, specific plays that happened. You could see him chewing out Todd Bowles when, things went wrong in that last fourth quarter for the defense. They're both very passionate players, and they both really want to win the rest of these games and make it to the playoffs and make a push for the Super Bowl.
That's something that the Buccaneers have been missing over the last, if really since Mike Evans has gone out, they really haven't had a guy that looks like he has true passion to the team. Looks like on defense, it looks like Devontae Davis is really the only guy that cares. You can see him chewing out guys like Winfield and Jamel Dean and Sergosia Dennis because they don't seem to care as much, which you can obviously, put that on somewhat of a coaching issue because he's the one getting them prepared. He's the one that's supposed to get them ready and fired up for the games. But, these guys have to want it more. And, ever since Mike Evans came back, it does really look like the team has a lot more of those guys just by him being in the game.
Yeah, it's weird because there was a time when the Buccaneers were 5-1, right? There was a time when the Buccaneers were at the top of the NFL, and it's not to say that any players that they got too comfortable or anything, but it definitely does seem like that the motivation hasn't been all there, especially since they've been kind of losing games. They haven't been able to secure as many games. They went into the toughest part of their schedule, and their confidence kind of fell apart a little bit. I do think that the remainder of the season, if they hold the confidence, if they hold, strong to the foundation, the fundamentals of football, and they can just play clean football, they can, reduce the penalties on special teams especially, and they can just, like I said, play clean, hard-nosed football, then I think that the Buccaneers could have a solid remainder of their season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this game really is the most important for the rest of the season. If the Buccaneers win this, their playoff odds are going to jump to around 80% versus if they lose, it's going to jump down to around, 25, probably even lower than that with, a game against Miami next week that the Bucs are hopeful in winning. That if they don't win any of the games against the Panthers, it doesn't matter. You have to win one of the games against the Panthers, and you want it to be this one because you're in their house, and if you can get a win, it looks a lot better for you, and it builds a lot more momentum going into the final 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, but I think it is quite important to note that this isn't the same old Panthers that we've seen the last 4 years. The Panthers, like you said, their defensive front very impressive. Their defensive secondary pretty good. They have Bryce Young has targets now. Bryce Young has protection now. Bryce Young has a run game to work with now. Bryce Young has a Dave Canales at head coach to work with now. He has so many different, facets that make that team better and improve that team overall. This is not the same team that we've seen in the last couple of years, and I do expect that this game, if it does end up tipping in the Buccaneers' favor, which I hope it does, it is not by any means going to be a one-sided, lopsided sort of game. It's going to be very competitive. It's going to be, to the end, a hard fight for both teams. And I do think that the Buccaneers, it's probable that they could come out with the win at the Panthers' home in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium, where you will be today. Will you be posting on the Between the Lines social media some portions of the game?
Yes, I will. And I do want to mention that the tickets have been secured. We will be sitting in row 110, which is pretty close to the Bucs 50-yard line. We are going to be in row 18. So some very good tickets there. And, definitely going to be getting some content and getting it up on social media.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Jake himself, he's going to be uploading content from the Carolina Panthers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Carolina Panthers game, the important interdivision matchup. So you know where to look for exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else on the Between the Lines social media. You know where to find them. You can see right below me and Aiden right now the scroll bar. You can find all of our social media, and via our social media, you can find our website and absolutely everything else you need to. I want to get into some discussion real quick, break away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some Rays news. Me and Aiden previously discussed it a little bit. How do we feel about the Brandon Lau trade, the multi-team trade that involved the Pirates and the Astros? What are your thoughts on that and the future for the Rays going forward?
So I will say this. On the face value, the Brandon Lau trade doesn't look too impressive. You know, the Tampa Bay Rays gave up 3 players, Mason Montgomery, Jake Mangum, and Brandon Lau. Brandon Lau obviously being a superstar. Mason Montgomery truly does have closer potential, but Jake Mangum, another scrappy player, you know, one of those two-tool players who, you know, really does contribute, but doesn't really have a spot on the team next year. I think on the face value, it doesn't look like the Rays really got a great return. You know, Astros obviously with one of the weaker farm systems in the league, probably the weakest other than the Padres. You know, getting their number 2 and their 7 doesn't really look too impressive. But when you really do look into the underlying metrics between, you know, the pitcher Anderson Brito, that guy has 4 quality pitches and a 5th that, you know, needs some work, but he's still yet only 21 years old. And him, you know, developing in the Rays system, I think it's going to be really helpful for him.
To read you a quote that Eric Neander said earlier, and I actually read this previously on the show. Friday's deals were, I think, more about losing a little bit in 26 to gain an awful lot as we look into the future. Do you feel like that sentiment that the Rays have been running on for so long is going to still hold true, and that we should keep looking towards the future, rather than trying to secure winning this season with the talent that we have? You know, Junior Caminero, you know, Shane McClanahan coming back. Do you feel like we should try to capitalize now, or do you feel like we should keep looking towards the future like we have been?
You know, I don't mind what the Rays are doing, but I am getting kind of tired of him saying the same things. You know, it's always, we lost a little bit this year to gain a lot in the future. And, you know, it feels like ever since 2020 and the Blake Snell trade, he's been saying that. But, you know, I do want to kind of bring some reassurance to some Rays fans that the Rays traded Blake Snell and they went on to have a 100-win season. So don't think that just because one guy is gone, the team is now screwed and there won't be, you know, any scenario where the Rays can win. There's a chance that they can go out and get, you know, some key contributing players. I think Willie Castro is definitely a big option that the Rays could, you know, definitely sign if it's not a trade for Ketel Marte or Brendan Donovan. You know, maybe a Willie Castro and JT Realmuto or Victor Caratini combination can, you know, relapse some of that offense that the Rays will be missing from losing a guy like Brandon Lau.
I would really like if we did sign JT Realmuto, because I know the Rays, as long as I know them, we haven't had a catcher that can gun someone out a second. It's been so long since.
Yeah, and you know, framing is also another big issue with the Rays over the last
I know
forever, really.
Yeah. Like Danny Jansen wasn't that great at it either. He wasn't. You know, I thought we were going to get a really strong defensive player out of Danny Jansen, but he really just didn't step up in that factor.
Yeah, and then they traded him and got the guy that they just actually recently added a 40-man roster to prevent him from being taken in the Rule 5 draft. He's somebody that I'm actually really high on, middle infielder. And, you know, I don't think we see him in the majors this year, as his highest level has been Double-A, but he's definitely a guy to look out for. And for, you know, half a year of Danny Jansen, I think that is a phenomenal return that they got out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with the Rays, you know, like I completely agree with that sentiment of, you know, it's kind of like, yes, it's good to look towards the future, but it is kind of getting tiring. You know, like he's been saying that ever since the Blake Snell trade. It's just getting a little exhausting as a Rays fan, you know, constantly looking towards the future rather than having a product that we enjoy now. Although Rays baseball is more fun than ever to watch. I do have to say that, you know, you do have to kind of look towards the future, and you do kind of have to, you know, think, hey, even though we might not be succeeding at the highest level, operating at the highest level this season, there is still a future to look forward to. There are some teams that, you know, they don't have a future necessarily as of right now to look forward to. They don't have something to look forward to. I think the Rays. I mean,
there's some teams like the Angels who are, you know, bottom 10 in prospects and also really don't have any major league talent other than, a few guys like Zach Neto, Logan O'Hoppe, and, an aging Mike Trout. So there's definitely a lot to look forward to as a Rays fan compared to, some other teams like the Angels.
Yeah, and another thing I have to say is this Brandon Lau trade, it does hurt a little bit because, he's 8 years is nothing to, turn your head at. But, I don't think it's as big as the Randy Arozarena trade. I don't think it's as emotionally, it doesn't hurt as bad as some of the other trades that have happened, especially considering what we got for Brelau. I do think that it might have been the right move, especially if it's a kind of a part of a bigger trade eventually.
Now, I'm getting some news, inactives for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Carolina Panthers game, going off of the Rays a little bit. Some, big surprises, actually. Anthony Walker will be an inactive, somebody they recently just signed back to the active roster off the Colts practice squad. But also Sterling Shepard will be inactive for the game today. With the amount of receivers that we see healthy and not really any key injuries, I think that's definitely a move that I was expecting, but some fans might not be.
Yeah, I definitely do think that they're entrusting this receiver core a lot to stay strong throughout the entire game, which I can understand. I don't think that anyone's going to be, I hope that no one's going to be, injured today or, have to leave the field for any purpose. But yeah, no, I can see that, just trying to create space for other guys, and make sure, everything goes smoothly over in Carolina. So, Jake, to wrap up this segment, to wrap up this phone call kind of area, we might get you out in about 4 minutes. Give me a score prediction for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Carolina Panthers. What do we think the final score will be coming out of this game?
That's a hard question. I think this game could go two ways. I think it's either going to be a sloppy, two offensive messes, not really any exciting things to watch, honestly, or I think this could be an absolute shootout. I think, it could be a 34-28 kind of scenario, but I also think it could be a 17-10 kind of scenario. So, I'm going to lean towards the 34-28 side, though. I think it's definitely going to be an offensive firepower game, and I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to pull out with the win.
And what do you think about the spread? Tampa Bay by 3. Do you think the spread will be going to Tampa Bay, or do you think it's going to go to Carolina?
I think the Buccaneers are going to cover the spread. I think when you look at the offensive firepower the Buccaneers are having, we haven't faced the Panthers this year, but there's too much firepower to not be racking up points. So if the defense can just hold its own and play a decent game, I think the Buccaneers are easily going to come out with this one.
And for stats, too, do you know a single player to get 2+ receptions? Do you think any player in this game will get 2+ receptions? And if so, who?
I honestly think the Bucs' top 4 receivers, along with Rachaad White and maybe even, Bucky Irving, are all going to get 2+ receptions. I think this offense is going to be very evenly spread, with the amount of firepower that they have. It makes no sense to leave, a guy out of the game plan and get, all these different kind of players. You got to get all of them the ball, and with that much talent, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And finally, do you have any player to get a touchdown on the ground or receiving? And if so, who?
I'm gonna go with Sean Tucker again. I think they've really liked him in the goal line scenarios. We saw him get, this was obviously when Bucky Irving wasn't playing, but we saw him get 4 straight attempts on the ground at the 1-yard line a few weeks ago, which was obviously a horrible decision, but they're giving it to him.
He even did get a rushing touchdown when Bucky Irving was healthy. Mm-hmm. So
I think he's
last week.
He's kind of put himself out there as our goal line back. Now I really like how he has stepped up though. I'm pretty sure he leads the Bucs skill players in touchdowns with 7 out of every skill player. I think Emeka right behind him with 6. But
I kind of want to say something. I'm pulling into Bank of America Stadium right now, and there's an entire parking lot full of Buccaneers fans. I think I see, maybe 3 blue colors out there.
That is a good sign.
Good to hear.
Definitely a lot of Buccaneers fans coming up, not too far north, probably about a 15-hour drive from Tampa. So definitely some good news there.
That is some great news to hear. We hope that the Buccaneers fans, when the Bucs are doing well, travel very well. I don't really know, when the Bucs are sitting at a situation like 7-7, but I hope that Buccaneers fans took the opportunity to show out and absolutely show up for these guys on the field today, because one of the biggest things you can do is show up. Be the 12th man for the Buccaneers here today.
Yeah, and this is a very big game. This is by far the biggest game of the season so far. So coming out with a win and we're getting healthy. That's the big thing. There's some rumors that Kalijah Kancey could be getting his practice window opened up, for the playoffs, and that's another player that is extremely key. But with the offense getting about as healthy as it's going to get for the rest of the year, I think this is a very big game, and I'm glad Buccaneers fans are traveling for it.
Definitely, and playoffs are on everyone's mind right now, especially the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because, today's game is so important. But I feel like right now we just got to have that, one game at a time, next man up mentality. Today, Carolina Panthers, next week, Dolphins, third and final week from now, Carolina Panthers, one last time at home. You really just want to secure a playoff berth here. You want to see the Buccaneers succeed at the highest level. Do you have any closing remarks for us, Jake, before we get you out of here?
I actually do. We will be traveling to Miami next week, and I think that's definitely another game that we will be posting on social media, so you make sure to follow us. But
without a doubt,
I think that Miami game, it's an even closer drive. So Buccaneers fans, show out, and Miami Dolphins are out of the playoffs. They don't really have a reason to go over and take over their trap.
Exactly, I completely agree. Interstate matchup there.
Yeah, one thing I do also wonder is who they're going to be starting. Are we going to see Quinn Ewers, or are we going to?
I think we're going to be seeing Quinn Ewers. I don't think they're going to move off of him after just one game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Quinn Ewers might be a rest of the season endeavor, especially when you bench a starting quarterback as an important to the scheme for the Dolphins the last few years is Tua Tagovailoa. I think they finally flipped the switch. They made the decision. They said, hey, we just can't. He leads the league in interceptions, so we can't do this anymore. Tua Tagovailoa or Quinn Ewers, it's now your opportunity, and I think they want to see him perform for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go ahead and walk into Bank of America Stadium to take the Buccaneers game. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go, but go Buccaneers.
Go Bucs, baby. Have a good game, and make sure to follow the Between the Lines Instagram, TikTok, all forms of social media today to stay up to date with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers football game that will be occurring at 1 p.m. Thank you so much, Jake, for calling in. We appreciate you. We just look forward to seeing the Buccaneers hopefully come out with a win today against the Carolina Panthers. What are your kind of keys to the game for the Buccaneers today? What do you say the Buccaneers should win or should secure to get one step closer to a win against the Panthers?
Well, I think the edge, like the interior and the edge on the D-line, really have to step up. They're missing a lot of their offensive linemen this week, so we really have to get to Bryce Young, give him the pressure, and I think if we get pressure to Bryce Young, I think we could take this game very easily.
Yeah, capitalizing on injuries, especially on the offensive line, is always really important. It really matters when it comes to teams, especially like the Carolina Panthers, that have had a pretty strong offensive line this season. They haven't given up many pressures, especially when you have a defensive line that's kind of either younger or not as it's not attacking as hard like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They haven't been playing, in the way that they have the last couple of years. Obviously, you have injuries in Kalijah Kancey, one of your key inside guys. William Golston retired at the end of last season, so you're missing him as well. Hassan Reddick has not been performing like, Jason Light and Todd Bowles expected he would at the start of the season. All around, it's just kind of been weak performance by the defensive line. So, yeah, I do agree with that. I do think that, getting to the quarterback, creating some pressure, where it starts is the line. So I think that is really where it lies today for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on defense.
And flipping to the offensive line, too, I think the offensive line has to step up against Derek Brown, really. Derek Brown is really great at stopping the run and getting pressure on the quarterback. And as we've seen this past season, really, Baker's not really had time in the pocket to get throws out. I mean, obviously he had a really great game last game in the loss against the Falcons. He really was slinging the ball when he had every single receiver because, you have the 3-level threat. You have Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, and Mike Evans.
Mm-hmm.
You have the chance to throw it deep if you like it. If not, you have a great short route runner, slot receiver in Chris Godwin, and you can always hit that medium route, or you can always even implement the screen again too. But the screen obviously does have the offensive line has some impact on the screen too.
Mm-hmm. And on the offensive side of things for the Buccaneers, it's kind of a question going forward that I have. We were just talking about Sean Tucker, right? Mm-hmm. We've also discussed Bucky Irving, and we've also briefly discussed Rachaad White. So those are 3 very solid running backs. And the Buccaneers kind of have a problem this season where, it's past the trade deadline. Obviously all 3 backs have been getting used in some way, shape, or form. We've definitely seen more Bucky Irving and more Sean Tucker than Rachaad White in the last couple of weeks. What do you feel like is going to happen to this running back room at the end of the season going forward? Do you think that other teams are going to try to poach someone out? Do you think they're going to try to get someone? Do you think that the Buccaneers are going to let someone walk for cap space? Do you think that the Buccaneers are going to try to stick with this 3-back rotation and, that they're confident in them? Or, what do you think the possible scenarios for this running back room are going forward, and what do you think is most likely?
Well, I see us getting rid of Rachaad White. I could see it being a possibility, as he – last season I thought he was going to leave, and I saw him being a Bear or a Raider. But now that the Raiders have Ashton Genty, and I thought the Bears were going to move on from DeAndre Swift, but now they have Kyle Monangai, which has been playing really great. Mm-hmm. So, but I do still see
and also a completely different offensive line for those Bears.
Mm-hmm. They signed a lot of new people like Frank Ragnow and
Joe Thuney.
Joe Thuney. It's that offense. No, I didn't sign. I don't know why I said Frank Ragnow. I meant Joe Thuney, but. But yeah, I could see him moving to a team that's lackluster.
You were thinking about the head coach. You're thinking about the head coach there. Lions former offensive coordinator.
But yeah, I could see them moving on from Rachaad White. Now that you have Bucky, he's obviously been great this season too. He's been great in the receiving game, as we've seen. And Sean Tucker being that goal line power back really is kind of what we used Rachaad White for last season. He was kind of that still 3rd down back, but he's still, it's kind of been taken over by Sean Tucker as the power back and keeping Bucky in on those 3rd downs too. I really think he will be the one to move on out of everyone out of this running back room. Yeah,
and another thing to note is Josh Grizzard. At the start of the season, I was extremely unimpressed by his offensive play calling. He was showing no signs of any type of creativity. It was very boring. It was a very boring offense to watch. Mm-hmm. Just overall, they weren't doing much. They were the games that they were winning, they were close games with teams that they should have been blowing out. Mm-hmm. Especially with the offensive talent they had, especially with the defensive talent they had, just all around, they shouldn't have been as close as they were. They shouldn't have been won in the last minute and a half, 2 minutes. But yeah, I do think that the offensive play calling by Josh Grizzard has improved significantly. Mm-hmm. I do think that he's gotten more creative. He's had more pre-snap motion. He's included a lot more of direct snaps. Running backs in the backfield, shifting position. And I do like the fact that he's kind of continuing the sentiment that Liam Cohen actually implemented at first of the, Baker Mayfield gets kind of freedom at the line where he can decide what play he wants to run based on the defense, the coverage that they're showing, the personnel that they have out on the field. And I think that also allows for Baker Mayfield to pick up on blitzes easier. And I think against the Carolina Panthers, we'll see a lot less of Baker Mayfield, kind of getting caught in the pocket, getting pressured, getting, thrown back. And obviously he's going to get sacked. Obviously there is going to be pressure present. However, I do think he's going to be able to deal with it better because, it's a division rival. You game playing against them probably more than really the other 28 teams in the league because, you have to play them twice a year.
Yeah, you have to play them twice a year. You're going to have that matchup coming up right again. So they're going to be changing. If you get the win, they're probably going to be changing how they play. So you got to kind of predict how they're going to do that, and it's usually found out in the first drive. That really shows you how you're what you're playing against and how you're going to be playing against them.
Definitely, and that's another thing that has to change very quickly if Todd Bowles even wants to consider keeping his job in the long run. Is he makes great halftime adjustments, but they shouldn't be halftime adjustments. But 2 quarters, that's 30 minutes. That's a lot of time for another offense to, rip our defense to shreds before we actually start to make changes that can affect the game. A lot of the games are lost in the first half, especially by this Buccaneers defense, because then they can't swing the momentum back in their favor. They can't, just come out with the win because they're playing from behind. It's an uphill battle for the Buccaneers, especially on offense. And that's one of the biggest issues with Todd Bowles is that he waits too long to make adjustments. He can't make quick adjustments that change the game, in every aspect early. You kind of have to wait for that. And so a lot of the time you see this defense just playing, I wouldn't say catch up, but you see them playing a brand of, hey, well, we've done this, and that's kind of worked, so we have to hold off until the second half when we can really start reading the offense and, making big plays. Whether that's in the pocket or in the defensive secondary, whatever, the adjustments need to happen quicker and sooner.
Yeah, that's why I really like us having a separate defense, not having a head coach as our defensive coordinator too, because say we have a defensive coordinator, head coach, and offensive coordinator, all separate people. Defensive coordinator, after those defensive drives, step to the side, step back with the players, discuss it with them. Unlike Todd Bowles, he has to stay on that sideline, watch the front the whole time. Doesn't have the time to talk down with his players. Only at halftime, which is why I wouldn't mind keeping Todd Bowles at head coach if we can sign a defensive coordinator. Just get him off defensive coordinator, keep him as head coach, and just bring in a new defensive coordinator, someone who can really implement the defense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That is one of the largest issues with Todd Bowles. It's just that he can't manage everything all at once. It seems, clock management. He's been very historically poor at clock management because he's also been looking at the defense, and then while he's looking at the defense, he's looking at what the offensive coordinator is doing on offense. He has to make, timeout decisions. He has to make coaching decisions. He has to make play call decisions. He has to
make challenge decisions too, which
exactly.
he couldn't make in the last game. He said, I don't know if this is true or not, but he said in his post-game interview where he actually dropped 7 F-bombs.
I believe it was more.
Probably was more, but he said someone asked about reviewing one of the fumbles, and he said, we tried to, didn't let us.
Yeah, that's just a joke.
I don't think that's true at all. I think, and I didn't like how he said in his interview, as he said he didn't want to shift the blame on anyone. But then
continue to shift the blame
on every single player. He said the players have to step up. The coaches did all they can do. And if you're losing to a division rival in that close of a game, the coaches aren't doing everything they can do.
Exactly. That's exactly what I said.
If we're throwing interceptions in the fourth quarter while trying to run down clock, we're getting play losses. We're not making tackles. You can't put that all in besides making the tackles play, which this is why I'm really happy Tyke Smith is back, because he really he's the first part to the 11 to the ball. Mm-hmm. He's usually the first person there, first or second person there that helps the rally, but you can't I don't know if it was on Kindle Vildor, but we had people playing above the sticks and under the sticks in that 4th and 14 conversion. Mm-hmm. We had no one on the sticks, which is where David Sills V was able to make the catch for, I think, 18 yards to get the first down, which you can't blame that on the players.
That's the thing with Todd Bowles' defensive coverage and his schemes is he leaves way too much room open in the middle. That's how they killed us with Kyle Pitts over the middle. Mm-hmm. Bijan out to the flats, up the middle to the flats, up the middle to the flats, short gains that would lead to bigger gains down the field because the defense would then try to play shorter. And it was just a horrible defensive scheme overall. It didn't work. It fell apart. The adjustments, they worked slightly for the third quarter, but, past the third quarter, once you get past that, little bit of play, then, you really see what you have. And what you had was a defense that could not stop the Atlanta offense, especially with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins genuinely looked like a top 5 quarterback in the league against our defense.
Which he shouldn't. There's a reason he got benched. He got benched because he cannot play football at a high level against
competitive teams.
Against a competitive team, in which the Bucs can be a competitive team. Mm-hmm. But we just don't play like it if we don't get the right coaching.
Yeah, no, it was a hard game to watch. Especially towards the end there. There were so many moments when the Buccaneers definitely could have won that game. And that was the biggest thing. But, you can't really let the past, bring you down. You got to look towards the future. I think today's game, I think some of the biggest, the keys to the game is win the time of possession, right? You want to hold on to the ball. You saw it last week in the fourth quarter when we had the lead. Instead of running the ball multiple times, chewing as much clock as you can, making the Atlanta Falcons burn their timeouts, what they did was they threw it multiple times for incompletes that stopped the clock. That then led to plays that the Atlanta Falcons could make that completely shifted the game into their favor, and it really changed things for the Buccaneers in a negative sense. So yeah, win the time of possession, manage the clock correctly if it comes to that, sort of situation. Only go for it on fourth down if it's seriously worth it, right? Because we've seen them go for it on 4th and 3, 4th and 2, where it's like, we could deal with a punt here. Like, we could deal with a punt, live to see another drive.
Definitely in the rain game against the Saints. I'm pretty sure we attempted seven fourth downs, and we only converted like 2 of them, which is just out of this. It's weather conditions have a huge factor, so you can't pass on those fourth downs. Even if you want to, catching the ball is going to be slimmer because of the rain. Throwing the ball accurately is going to be slimmer because of the rain. So it really just it leaves the defense to know you're doing one thing, and they're going to really attack the run. And trying it 7 times after I'm pretty sure it didn't even work the first 3 times, trying it 7 times is just out of this world. Sometimes you got to know you just have to punt.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Even when we missed some of those, that led to them getting great offensive drives, that really is the reason why we lost to the Saints too. But I like what you said earlier. We got to not only just look to the future, but we got to play in the present.
Exactly.
We got to play what comes to us. Obviously, we play the Panthers in a little bit. This is one of the games we have to win.
Definitely. And another thing with the offense and Josh Grizzard is, he hasn't been very good at exploiting the strengths rather than relying on the sentiment of, it'll get better eventually. Baker Mayfield in the last few weeks, his passing hasn't been the best, that he's had in his career, right? He's kind of falling short on some passes. He's overthrowing guys. He's, leading guys too far. He's throwing, behind guys. You got to kind of rely more on the short game in that sense. You got to rely on the run game. You got to, rely on your left all-pro tackle, Tristan Wirfs, to, make some blocks, get out in space, make some downfield blocks to get Bucky Irving out. I would say rely more on some, believe it or not, this is what the Achilles heel was for this offense in the start of the year, but more screens, kind of block more, more physical offense rather than trying to, beat them down the field with fast, receivers and stuff. Although, if you can scheme correctly, the receiver, get them in the proper routes that will beat the secondary, you have all the talent. Mike Evans deep, Emeka Egbuka and the crossers over the middle, Chris Godwin in the short game. As long as you can get, and Jalen McMillan damn near anywhere. Jalen McMillan really just anywhere.
Yeah, Jalen McMillan could play the 3 really well. He did really good on the deep routes last year, deep to medium. I think he had how many 6 straight games with a touchdown towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Definitely with that great touchdown in the end zone to help us make the playoffs last year too.
Even in week 1 against the Commanders, that I remember that catch was impressive as hell.
Yeah, it was the route too. I think the route was the more impressive thing. Getting that much. I think the week 1 against the Commanders, that had to have been. I don't know if it was just a coverage problem, but he had the corner to the end zone wide open. He'd walk backwards into the end zone for his first catch and first touchdown for 15 yards.
Man, talking about Jalen McMillan, Washington might be one of the craziest, most underrated powerhouses for NFL talent that in the NFL. Think about it. Just on the Bucs alone, you have Jalen McMillan, Devin Culp, Cade Otton, Vita Vea. At one point, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka you had. So a lot of different things. We're actually receiving a call back from Jake, our co-host. So I'm going to answer it because, he's as crucial to the show as either you or me are. Jake, what's going on right now? Why are you calling back?
So the tickets might be in your Ticketmaster account due to last Thursday. So I was just calling.
That's interesting.
Go ahead and check that.
It looks like me and Aiden are going to the Carolina Panthers game today rather than Jake and his family.
I don't think you're going to make it in time, to be honest.
Well, we will see. But that is a technical issue, and we will have that figured out. Is there anything else you have to report on Jake?
No, do not. Just, if you could text me that would be awesome.
All right, most definitely. All right, well, we'll see you. That's interesting.
I didn't expect that. I
Yeah,
thought was
so
gonna
he
have
had to
some
log
news.
into my Ticketmaster last week to use the tickets. That's actually very funny.
Okay, so me and Tristan will be going to American Bank Stadium to watch
Bank of
the
America
Bank
Stadium.
of America Stadium to
In
watch
Charlotte.
to watch the Buccaneers versus the Panthers, while Jake and his family can take the drive back to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, you know what? They don't even get to fly back like they did. They get to take their rental
Yeah,
and drive back. But yeah, going back to that discussion before we were interrupted by Jake needing those tickets. Washington is one of the powerhouses, really, of college football when it comes to producing NFL talent. Like I said, Jalen McMillan, Cade Otton, Vita Vea, Devin Culp, all these guys that are on the Buccaneers 53-man active roster. Kind of going into that college topic, though, we had the first round of college football playoffs being played, or some of the games from the first round of the college football playoffs, and it was pretty lopsided for most of them. It made sense. Oregon, number 5th ranked Oregon versus number 12th ranked JMU. They beat them 51-34 in the last game of the night. Number 6th ranked Ole Miss played number 11th ranked Tulane. They beat them 41-10. So two pretty lopsided games there. People wondered why JMU and Tulane made it in over Notre Dame. I still kind of wonder that. I believe Notre Dame would have had a better shot.
Yeah, I think they would have done way better than. I honestly think Tulane. I like the fact that they should make the playoffs even though they're in a poorer conference.
Mhm.
Like when Boise State made it last year with Aston Genty and that whole offense with Max Madsen. I really like the fact implementing those teams, but I think Notre Dame should have. If you're trying to look for views and stuff like that, if you're trying to get the best game on the field, I think putting Notre Dame in the playoffs was definitely the right choice.
Definitely.
Not putting James,
Especially
Madison.
for a better, more entertaining, and then also just a better market with more viewership. And then the biggest game of the day, it was number 10th ranked Miami versus number 7th ranked Texas A&M. Miami beat Texas A&M 10-3 at Texas A&M at the home of the 12th man. That was pretty impressive. I gotta say, it was a very close game. It looked like it could have turned into Texas A&M's favor at the very end, as they could have tied it up with that touchdown. But
Yeah, Marcel Reed throwing the interception in the end zone just
sealed the deal.
Really, that's what ended the game. Honestly, Marcel Reed, in general, he did play solid, but 15 carries for 27 yards. How does that?
I think they include the sacks in that, statistic.
Yeah, no, it's sacks. 7 sacks. So how do you talk about that Texas A&M offensive line?
Yeah, you got to have a serious discussion with your Texas A&M offensive line and say, hey, guys, you might want to look into the transfer portal, because we are going to replace you one way or another, because that is absolutely awful against the Miami defensive front. And, the Miami defensive front has been good since Warren Sapp played for the Miami defensive front.
Yeah.
But, still,
And what
7
about-
sacks is absolutely insane. That is not acceptable by any means
And
for
what
any
about
offensive
Mark
line.
Fletcher Jr.? 17 carries, 172 yards against the Texas A&M
Absolute
defense.
dog, dude. I think he. I don't know what grade he is currently in college, whether he's a sophomore, junior, senior. But I do think
I
that
think he's a junior.
when he does eventually decide to either declare for the NFL draft or whatever decision he makes in his
I
career,
think this game will be on his resume.
I think
Trying
that
to-
is for sure.
Top 17, putting up over 10 yards per carry, and having over 172 yards.
Think about it for these players, right? When the NFL draft eventually rolls around, and the pick is in, and the draft happens for an individual player, the NFL, the media, they always play clips of the player from any point in their career. I feel like this is definitely one of those games that's going to make it on that quick highlight reel that they show at the draft when he eventually does get drafted, because that is impressive as all hell.
Yeah,
That's
and
a lot.
I think the one run that will be on there is his 56-yard gash up the field, which led to the game-winning touchdown by Tony. I think that's definitely one that's going to be on there. A 56-yard rip up the field to lead to a game-winning drive. I feel like that's and definitely in the college football playoffs too. That's something that's going to be on your resume.
Definitely very impressive all around. Some great games there, and some great college football games coming up in the future. But with that being said, we are kind of coming towards the end of Between the Lines here today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did, just to quickly say, Buccaneers versus Panthers. Big game today among the rest of the NFL slate of games. So tune in at 1 p.m. for the Buccaneers at Carolina Panthers at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. Jake will be there. Tune into the Between the Lines Instagram and TikTok for all social media coverage of it. This has been Between the Lines live from Ferg Sports Bar and Grill in our Ice Pick Vodka, Body Armor, and Coca-Cola studios. I have been Tristan with my co-host Aiden, not Jake today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day.